My name is Jose Echeverria. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, and this is my story. So growing up for me was a little bit different, or so I thought. I mean, I want to say that I grew up in a dysfunctional home, very violent home. Even though we had a mom in our and my dad in the picture, it wasn't always like a happy family. I was the youngest of seven. I have a twin brother, and me and him were inseparable. Um, my dad used to like beating on my mom, and I remember coming home from school every day, and my poor mom, just doing whatever she can around the house. And eventually, my dad would get home in the evening, a lot of the times drunk, a lot of the times full of rage. We didn't know why, putting hands on my mom, and we got tired of it. You know what I mean? Like me and my brother had got tired of it, not only because we were terrified of my dad, but we were tired of seeing my mom getting beaten and crying, and my dad continuing with my sisters. I remember me and my brother had a conversation about the next time my dad coming in and acting a fool the way he used to act. That we were gonna put a stop to it, or we were gonna try to see if we could make something happen, because we didn't like the way he used to treat my mom or anything. And that same night, man, I still remember perfectly that same day me and my brother had that conversation. I was talking to my mom, and you know what? A lot of the times when I used to sit with my mom, just me and her by myself, or me and my brother, like she was the most loving, caring person that somebody can have. But the minute my dad would walk in the door, like her whole demeanor would change, and it was like she had to be another person, and we used to trip out on that a lot. And I think because of that is where I started building resentments and hatred towards my dad, because I knew at a young age that he was doing something that he was doing something to my mom when she was defenseless at the time. Excuse me. My dad walked in the house that same day that me and my brother had a conversation, and I got scared. I'm not gonna lie, I got scared. My brother wasn't right there to back up my play, and my dad came home drunk, and my mom, he started like right away started messing with my mom, and he started beating her, and I ran into my sister's room. Um, I ran into my sister's room and I hid under the bed, and my sister was asleep. I remember my dad, after he was done with my mom, he walked in the room, and a lot of the times my sisters, we he used to continue beating on my sisters or whatever. So to me that was normal for him to walk in the room and continue beating on my sister. But this particular time is where I learned and I understood that there was more than just the beatings going on. The noises that I heard, and the way my sister was responding to things and pleading for my dad not to do, told me that my dad was doing something that I didn't agree with. Like he was molesting my sisters. I remember I don't know what took over me, but I ran out of the room, and and I remember telling myself that I was gonna kill my dad, because I knew at that age that he was doing something horrible to my sisters, and I didn't. I wanted to put a stop to that. So I remember running to the kitchen, and this is, for some reason, I don't know why, these are the youngest memories that I have of myself. Before this, I can't remember anything about my childhood, right? So I remember running into the kitchen and grabbing a knife, and then going back into the room, and my dad was drunk, and I dropped the knife, but I tried punching my dad, and he seen what was going on, and my dad, drunk, full of rage, he beat the shit out of me. Like, excuse my language, but he beat me so bad to where I ran away from home. I never wanted to come back home. And at that moment, I knew instantly that I was damaged. You know what I mean? That I was gonna be hurting for a very long time, but I just didn't know how to deal with that, because when we're kids, when we're young, we're not taught to talk about our feelings. We're not taught to talk about the things that go on at home. We're not taught to talk about any of that, right? Any of our traumas or none of that. So a lot of those things I held in, and I never talked to anybody about them until now. Um, I want to say that growing up, I was a very active kid. I mean, very active, very aggressive. I wouldn't listen to anybody. I would always get in trouble at school. We weren't allowed to go back home, so a lot of the times we would just after school we would hang out at a park that's down the street from where we used to live, and we would hang out with a group of people that were a little bit older than us, and that group of people became my family. Those became my homeboys. My homeboys became my family, and at a young age, I started getting involved in the gang lifestyle, and before you know it, I started learning how to survive on the streets, and as the time went on, me and my brother, like we didn't need a dad no more, or a mom. You know what I mean? But one thing that I do remember was always carrying this feeling of being a failure, because I couldn't save my sisters, being a failure because as a young man or a young kid, not even a man, a kid at that time, I wanted my mom to do something about it, about what was going on in my house, but she never did. You know, now I understand very well that my mom was defenseless and she was living in fear of my dad as well. So did my sisters. So at a very young age, I learned a lot about hate, a lot about anger, a lot about failure, like being a failure or feeling like a failure, and carrying a lot of guilt. Um, I never really cared too much for anything growing up or anybody, because I never had anybody to care for me the way that they should have. Damn, can we cut real quick?
Yeah. Your eyes are sweating.
Nah, my eyes are getting watery, dog. Yeah. So growing up, like after a while, we didn't need a dad or a mom. Like after a while, we actually stopped caring about what mom or dad thought. You know what I mean? We weren't allowed to go back home anyway, so we would just run. We would do what we wanted or what we needed to survive on the street. I remember a lot of times I would be at the park, right, right down the street from my house, and I would see my dad from where I'll be at the park. I started smoking cigarettes at a young age, like at 11. Maybe because somebody had told me that it would calm my nerves, or maybe because I mean at a young age, to be stressed out the way I was, I don't think it was fair. You know what I mean? But I remember every morning I would sit there and smoke a cigarette, and I would see my dad getting in the car and leaving, going to work, and that was my opportunity to go home and you know, talk to my mom, shower real quick, or the days that we would sneak into the house, we would have to sneak in through the window, because my dad, like, if he would see us at the house, he pretty much would throw us out of the house, or like he used to put hands on us. He would beat our ass. So there was a lot of times where my sisters, even after school, like they'll go around to the back of the house and come down the alley and bring me and my brother and a couple of my homeboys some food, because so back to the guys that became my family right there at the park. I didn't know that at that age, I didn't know that I was gonna end up being a gang member the way I became. You know what I mean? It wasn't my intentions to become a gang member. I think that running away from home, from my traumas and everything, pushed me to that lifestyle. Running away from home, from having that fear in me, I was terrified of my dad. And but I loved my mom with all my heart, and I would struggle with that, because I would always go back to the house, and no matter how many ass whoopings I would get or whatever, or my dad would finally just like see us and let us be. But the minute he would start drinking, like he would fight with us or whatever. So it was always a constant battle between that, right? And at a young age, I couldn't understand why my mom wouldn't do something about it. You know, like So I started developing a resentment for my mom after a while too, and a lot of the times, um, like I seen my sister, one of my sisters, become a prostitute at a young age, right? And I didn't. I wanted to act like if I didn't know what was going on, but I already knew what was going on. She became a heroin addict at a young age, and I know it was all because of the things that were happening with her, and she couldn't talk to anybody, right? My other sister, she became very distant. She became very like dark spirited. She actually started doing witchcraft, and that used to scare the shit out of me too. You know what I mean? But that was her own way of dealing with whatever she was going through at the moment. You know what I'm saying? Um, Man, my brother fucking started doing drugs at a very young age. I think we were 12 years old, and my brother started smoking pea dogs, and then he started smoking crack. I never really liked drugs. I never, growing up, I hated drugs, but I used to smoke cigarettes. So just seeing all that, um, growing up, it made me, I want to say like, I don't want to say a cold individual because I've always been strong on my emotions. I didn't know how to act on them. I've always been, but it made me very aggressive, right? It made me very aggressive. It made me very, like, I didn't care too much for anything. If somebody needed something done, they know who to call. Like, I wasn't gonna say no, you know. And I spent a lot of time in jail behind that. You know, I got busted when I was 12 the first time, and it didn't stop. My brother too. My twin brother. He got arrested, and then eventually it became a pattern for us to go. Like eventually, if we were out together, probably like about a month, it was already something like lengthy. You know what I mean? Like we were like, damn, we stood each other out with each other for a whole month. You know. I grew up in juvenile hall. Like I grew up in juvenile hall, and at first, like I want to say that my first time that I got busted, that I went to juvenile hall, I was scared. I was a scared little kid. You know what I mean? But then after I became comfortable there. You know what I'm saying? Like it got to the point to where we would get released from juvenile hall, and without even realizing, we were already planning our return. You know? I remember if I didn't see my brother out there on the streets, I'll be like, oh well, fuck it, I'll see him when I get busted. You know? And it was like that for me and my brother. Like growing up, he was always in, and we're twins. He was always in and I was out, or vice versa. I was always out and he was in. We never really got to spend a birthday with each other. Um, Growing up, it was so. I mean, it was a little bit difficult. A lot of times I want to say that we made it fun. You know, we didn't know any better. Our kind of fun was you know how we do it, partying, drinking with the homies or whatever. But when it was time for everybody to go back home, like me and my brother didn't really have nowhere to go. You know, we would we would have to end up putting an all nighter with the homies, and you know, like, oh no, we're cool, not letting the homies know that we didn't have nowhere to go. Like us trying to post up and fucking trying to be cool, but in reality, we had nowhere to go. Like, where were we gonna go? You know, so we would go back to the park, and there was already a couple of my homeboys that were a little bit older than me that were living at the park too, due to their own traumas, personal reasons, whatever that may be, and and that became our normal. That became our life. You know, growing up, we were always at the park, either running amok, doing stupid shit, destructive shit, or in juvenile hall. You know, juvenile hall turned into a like to something fun for me. Me and my brother, we would go in. It became like our way of going to school. Like, man, let's you know, we're going back in there. Let's go to this camp or let's go to that camp. And the only good thing that I could really say that came out of juvenile hall was that I got to graduate from high school because I was forced to go to school while in juvenile hall. Otherwise, I wouldn't have graduated from high school. You know what I mean? But because of that, because of me graduating from high school, it opened up a lot of doors for me. Like, I was able to get myself into the Iron Workers Union because of my high school diploma. I was able to get into college because of my high school diploma. I was able to get some real good jobs because of my high school diploma. So I can't, you know, like I wanna highlight that I was able to get my high school diploma in juvenile hall. Nothing that I'm proud of, but I'm grateful that I got at least to do that. You know, my 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 twin brother. He's he's a little bit different than me. Like I'm completely turning my life around. I'm 41 years old, and I want to say that these past 2 years I've been doing a lot of work on myself. I have two daughters that I never really got to be a part of their life as much as I would like to or love to, because I was always either in jail, running the streets, or loaded. You know what I mean? So like I told you guys earlier, growing up, I hated drugs because I seen what drugs could do to somebody. My brother, you know what I mean? My twin brother, he was the only one that I really had out there, and I seen what the drugs would do to him. Like I a lot of the times I was by myself. I was forced to face everything on my own, and I started getting involved in drugs because I was trying to cope with everything that I was going through. And I remember somebody. I remember this like so perfectly, and it was probably one of the things that I regret the most in my life, because I never knew that I had an addictive personality. But I remember it was my 18th birthday, and one of my homeboys that is, he's like my brother, but he's like, here, fool, do this line, you'll feel better. You know what I mean? And I don't know why I was like, all right, and I did a line, and after that it was fucking over. Like I lived for the high. You know what I mean? Like after that it was I became a full blown fucking tweaker. Like, you know what I'm saying? I would try to contain myself. I would try to clean up. It wouldn't work. Nothing would work. And then I didn't know that my trauma would lead to depression, right? I didn't know that all these underlying issues that I had growing up would lead to me having a mental breakdown. I didn't know that my trauma wouldn't it wouldn't allow me to be loving with my kids or affectionate with my kids, because I never had that growing up. You know, I used to push people away. I used to keep people at a distance because I didn't know what to expect. I never knew how to let anybody love me. You know what I'm saying? And I never knew how to love anybody in return because I never had that growing up. Like, our former love was fucking beating up on each other and everything that I seen in my household. So I carried that with me everywhere I went. You know what I mean? Even with my kids, like I thought I was being a good dad. I thought I would be a good dad when my kids were young by providing. You know what I mean? Like by buying them whatever they wanted or giving my babies my money. But I was never really there. And it was a lot easier, to be honest with you guys, and this is what hurts me even still to this day, that I remember a lot of times I would cry and I would struggle and everything because I wanted to be a good dad, but I didn't know how. And it was a lot easier for me to just to go get high and to drink than to be there and to sit there and figure it out. You know what I mean? Because I didn't know how to figure life out. I grew up like not figuring things out, right? I grew up on a survival mode on the streets. It was either I was gonna do whatever it took to survive, or get swallowed up by the streets. You know what I mean? But I think it was like in my 30s where I decided where I was gonna turn my life around, because I started seeing a lot of my homeboys dying. You know, a lot of people that I really cared for, and I started seeing the ugly side of what the gang lifestyle could do. You know, I mean, in that lifestyle, even your own homeboys are liable to flip on you. You know what I mean? At any given moment, like, and that's something that I never really understood either. You know, growing up is like I would have laid my life on the line for everybody. You know what I mean? All those homeboys that I grew up with, that I surrounded myself with, I still keep in contact with. And now as adults, we have conversations now. And those conversations are pretty much based on our past experiences and how we could be better for today and for our kids, and you know what I mean? I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I feel like I have a big guard up because you know, the the females in my life that I confided in about some of my things, I kind of feel like it was used against me. You know what I'm saying? And I mean not to throw nobody out there or anything like that, but I just that was in the past, and now I just proceed with caution. I don't know. Does that make sense? Like, I it's easier for me to open up to one of my homeboys because they already know more than half of my life story, right? They already know what I've been going through, and so now when we talk, it's like the other day I was talking to my homeboy Mickey, one of my homeboys, how the experiences that I told you guys with my dad, and how growing up, how I didn't know how to deal with it, and he kind of tripped out a little bit on my story, but he was like, you know what, like he told me that he was like, you weren't the only one that was going through that. You know what I mean? He's like, my story is a lot similar to yours. He's like, and if I were to tell you the things that I went through, you'll be surprised. You know, so that was a little bit more, that was kind of, I don't want to say comforting, but it told me that when I was a kid, I thought that everything that I was going through, I was the only one going through it. Like, and I say that because I for a long time, me and my brother were the youngest ones from the hood, the youngest ones from the park, whatever it might be, right? And we would see everybody else go home at the end of the night, and me and my brother really had nowhere to go. But one thing I do remember is we would start seeing homies' moms driving by looking for their kid or their dad, or you know what I mean? And a lot of the times we were like, damn, bro, like, why don't you just go home? Like, you could go home. It's easier, just, you know? And like, my dad and my mom were right up the street, but we were terrified of going home. You know what I'm saying? And I used to tell my homeboy, like, I remember telling one of my homies, like, why are you trying to stay out here with us when you have a place to be? I wish I had somewhere to go crash out at right now. You know? And my homeboy he just looked at me and he was like, damn. And he ended up going home. You know what I mean? But I think even as a kid, to go back to the question of when I, like, it started shifting for me, I think I wanted that so much as a kid that I carried with me as I grew up. You know what I'm saying? So, well into my 30s is when I made the decision that I was gonna do something better for myself, right? I had tried getting into a program for firefighting. I did a little firefighting for a little bit. That didn't work out. I mean, I had too much free time, so I ended up going back to jail. I fucked that up. But I never like, I always used to get good jobs. I always used to be good in school. I loved going to school. Even as a kid, I loved going to school. It's just my only problem was that I couldn't keep my mouth shut, and I was too aggressive with everybody around me. I would get thrown out of every school that I went to, you know. And I remember waking up sometimes at either at home when the times that we would sneak into the house or whatever, and waking up and feeling like, man, I'm gonna go to school today. And I wouldn't ever even make it to school because halfway down I would just meet up with other homies and I'd be like, fuck, let's jam, you know what I mean? Nothing that I'm proud of, but it's like, that was the way it was for us growing up. We didn't really have nobody to answer to. We didn't really have nobody that we thought cared for us. So a lot of the times we would end up doing destructive shit, or we would end up just like hurting other people. And you know what, even with that, like, so let's get to the place where I started noticing that the reason why I wanted to hurt other people was because I was hurt. You know, I remember somebody told me in juvenile hall, like you guys don't understand how much you guys are hurting, and yet you guys want to get out and hurt other people. And to me at that time when she told me that, it didn't really make too much sense to me. But growing up, like, through the work of therapy and everything, I understood very well what she meant. Like, it all made sense for me. Even with that, like, I feel like, so, I mean, a lot of the things that I'm telling you is little, like you said, little components of how my transformation was. But my biggest thing was, my biggest struggle was that I didn't know how to let go of the lifestyle, right? Like, I wanted better for myself. I wanted to do good in school, but at the same time, I thought I cared too much about what my homeboys would think, or the shit that they would say. You know what I mean? And I mean, we weren't perfect. We weren't like excuse me. We were doing our best as, as young kids that had no sense of responsibility or sense of direction or anything. The things that we were doing were the things that we believed in, right? Now I understand that they were the wrong things to believe in, of course, but it was a little bit hard because I used to like being around my teachers at school. I used to like being around like other people that would be inspiring and stuff, right? The thing is that after school, I still had to go back to my reality. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of times, if they would see me in school 2-3 times a week, they were lucky. You know what I mean? Or I was lucky to be at school 2-3 times a week. But most of the time, I wouldn't go to school, and a lot of times I would find myself in jail. And I want to say I was sitting in a prison cell, right? And I had gotten papers from the courts saying that I had to go back to court because my kids had gotten taken away, right? And you know what? One of the biggest, and it's still hard for me to talk about this to this date because I know that my kids went through a lot of trauma themselves growing up. But this is just to give you a little insight of how distorted my mentality used to be, right? So I come down from prison to LA County Jail, and I'm in LA County Jail waiting to go to court, and I run into one of my homeboys in the bus that's going to children's court too, right? And it's a homie he had already been busted for a while. He was a lifer. Well, he's still a lifer. I seen him, and it just like it became like I totally forgot about my kids. You know what I mean? Because this is somebody that I grew up with 100%. This is somebody that he was one of he's still in my immediate circle. One of my homies that I considered my brothers or whatever. And just to know that I was gonna be able to spend some hours with them. Even he had already been down for like 10 years or whatever, and I was probably never going to get this opportunity again. I completely forgot about my kids, right? I completely forgot about my kids, and I was like, filling them in on everything that had been going on in the hood, and like, my mind was so fucking far gone, far away from my kids, that the judge gave me 15 minutes with my kids, and I denied it, dude. You know what I mean? And that's one thing that my kids will never ever forget. Like my daughters, I know I've had conversations with my daughters, and they bring that up. You know what I mean? Like they bring some of those things up. And at that time, like, it was nothing to me because in my mind, like, I was gonna get out and I was gonna be able to do something for my kids or to see my kids later on. Let's put this on hold. I might not see this guy no more. I'm gonna talk to my homie. You know what I mean? I had my priorities all fucked up. But those are the kind of things that led me to that kind of pushed me away from my kids a little bit more because I started caring about my neighborhood a little bit more than I did for my kids. I started caring about the drugs and the alcohol a little bit more than I did for my kids. I started caring about the drugs and the alcohol a little bit more than I did for myself or for anybody for that reason. For that matter. I would try to stop the drugs and the alcohol. There was little times where I was clean, but I would always find my way back. I was around it all the time. Like it's hard to stop doing something and be surrounding yourself with that same environment. I want to say that a lot of times, a lot of things that most of the things that I put myself through was because of my own actions, 100%, right? But a lot of times, the reason behind my using, my drugging and alcohol, it wasn't even to enjoy the high. It was to cope with something that I was going through. And 99.9% of the time, nobody really knew. that I was dealing with something, because I was very good at hiding everything and masking my emotions and putting on this fucking facade. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this is so and so from wherever. You know what I mean? Like, I'm this fool. Like, nobody's gonna fucking, and that became like, that after a while became, I got tired of that, being that fake person. You know what I mean? Like, I got tired of being that like having to carry this false image with me. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Like, I would meet people and talk to people, and I could hold a very good conversation with these people, but before they knew it, I was already plotting on how I was gonna freaking rob them, get over on them, and you know what? And that was ugly of me to do that, but that was my addiction. That wasn't even me, you know. The reason, I mean, I want to say that the turning point for me was when everything started coming to light about what was going on with my dad and my sisters. As an adult now, my sister had a conversation with somebody. She was drunk and she had a conversation with somebody, and she confided in this person about what she had experienced with my dad as a child. You know what I mean? While this person, not realizing what she was doing, she kind of brought it to my attention. Like, hey, did you know that your dad was like doing this and to so and so or whatever? And in the beginning, when she said that, I was like, yeah, I knew that. But then again, it stopped me dead in my tracks, because for a long time I had stuffed all that so deep down that I forced myself to forget about it. Right? I never knew. Growing up, I used to try to figure out, like, man, where's all this anger come from? Where is all this aggressiveness comes from? Like, all these insecurities, all these I would hate when somebody would tell me I'll be right back and they would never come back. You know what I mean? Now I know that I had some real abandonment issues. You know what I mean? I would hate when somebody would like when somebody would be like mean to their parents or whatever, and like, I don't know, like, for some reason it like, I never knew where my character defects were coming from until that time when she said that. Like, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was like, fuck, everything that I had been stuffing deep down came back to me. Like, man, it was like my memory started getting flooded with everything, with all these traumatizing events and everything, and I couldn't deal with it. I was already too far gone in my addiction. I fell into a deep depression, and behind my drugging and all that, I ruined the marriage that I was in. Not just me, I mean, it was a lot more than that. But I ruined the relationship with my kids. I didn't know that I was depressed. I started messing with heroin. You know what I mean? And like I was telling Crook earlier, like, I ended up overdosing. And I was sitting in that hospital by myself. Nobody knew that I had overdosed. Nobody knew where I was. Nobody knew where I wouldn't tell anybody where I was at. And I remember sitting in the hospital and praying to God, and just asking God to just help me and to guide me, and just, to make me a better person. I was tired of living the way I was living. And I think that was where my life started transforming for me, because the minute I got out of that hospital from the overdose, is when I started looking for better ways to deal with my trauma, with my emotions, with my my anger per se, with my even with my homeboys or whoever. You know what I mean? Like, I started surrounding myself with positive people. I think that was the first time that I had. Okay, so I had gotten busted, right? And for some reason I was always the type to like, nah, fuck that fucker program. Let's go to prison. You know what I mean? Like, it was easier for me to say that. I thought a program was like something that was frowned upon, or It didn't. I just didn't like anything about a program. I had never even been there to judge a program, right? But this time I told the judge, like, man, I think I need a program. Like, every time you guys send me to prison, it never fucking helps me. You know what I mean? And I told him, like, I'm a drug addict. Like, I wanna try to get a little bit better. So, to my surprise, that judge sent me to a program. It was my first program, right? Uh, my first program. I was there for like about 5 months, and then I ended up getting thrown out. I was about to graduate, and then I ended up getting thrown out. The reason why I got thrown out from that program was because I wasn't doing no work on myself. I was, like, just being in the program. I thought I was doing everything that I needed to do to change. Um, I was waking up when they wanted me to. I was doing everything they were asking me to, but the work internally wasn't being done. And before you know it, the job that I had wasn't cutting it for me, so I started hustling inside the program. You know what I mean? So that they threw me out real quick. So that was my first program. I think that was like in 2008 or something. And and it didn't really mean shit to me. Like, it didn't really mean anything to me at the time. Like I was probably like 2 weeks away from completing the program, from graduating or whatever. But I was there for the wrong reasons. You know what I mean? I wasn't there to get help. That's something that I had just told the judge to get out of a jail time or jail sentence or whatever. But what it did do was it planted a seed in my head. It planted a seed in my head about like the change. You know what I'm saying? Um, and even though for me my change didn't come until probably like 10 years after that. While I was going through the little phases, like, I always kept telling myself, like, man, I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna go to a program. So it took me some time. I went to multiple programs, and I remember they had sent me to a different program. It was already probably like 2016, 2000. Yeah, 2016. Um, no, I'm lying. My mistake. It was no, I'm not lying. My mistake. Probably like 2012 or something like that. I had went to another program in Canoga Park, and I was there for 3 weeks, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I ended up leaving, and I called my ex-wife. She was my wife at the time, and I called her and I asked her if she can pick me up, and she said no, that she was at Homeboy Industries doing her GED. So that was the first time I really thought about Homeboy Industries, right? Because I told her that I had left from the program, and that I was gonna take the train down there. So she suggested for me to go to Homeboy Industries and see if I can get some help. So I went to Homeboy Industries, and they were able to help me get into another program, so I wouldn't get violated, and that created my relationship with Homeboy Industries. That began my relationship with Homeboy Industries. That opened up a couple of doors for me, and I want to say that after that is where I started really really thinking about transforming my life. I didn't get it the first time. I didn't get it the second time. It took me multiple times, and it even took me for me to go back out, and I ended up getting shot. I ended up relapsing. This last relapse, I ended up finding myself homeless. I, man, everything that I had worked hard for, I completely it completely vanished because of my addiction and my depression. But you know what? The hardest thing I probably had to do while in my addiction and everything was besides pull myself out of that dark place, was learn how to love myself and clean up the mess that I created for myself. You know what I mean? And I think that I say that is one of the hardest because for a person that doesn't know what love looks like, or what doesn't know what being loved or giving love or anything like that, like to sit with myself and have that conversation with me and to tell myself that I'm worthy of living a better life and everything. I had to completely learn how to love myself enough to understand my value, and to set my boundaries, for example, and to tell myself like I'm cool. I don't need that. Like that's gonna be detrimental for me. You know what I mean? If I go back to this, and it's been honestly, it's been about 2 years this time that I'm coming up on 2 years clean. By the way, I'm in recovery. I'm coming up on 2 years clean on March 17th. Um, but I want to say that within these last 2 years, I probably accomplished more than I ever have in a lifetime. You know, I had a little bit of clean time before while I was at Homeboy Industries. The first time I was clean for almost 3 years, but I just wasn't doing no work on myself. I didn't know what recovery was. I didn't know what healing looked like. I didn't know what having a support group looked like. I didn't know what having a sponsor or leaning on my brothers in recovery or anything like that looked like. I just wasn't picking up and using. The mentality was still there. I was still kicking it with the homies. I was still carrying fucking guns, doing stupid shit. You know what I mean? So I was able to stay clean for that period of time because nothing bad happened in between that time. But the minute something bad happened, it completely took me out. Like I ended up relapsing, and my relapse was even harder this time. Um, so for anybody that's out there even struggling with that part of their life, like with relapses, I'm a chronic relapse. You know what I mean? Like I relapsed more than once. By the grace of God, I'm fortunate to have almost 2 years coming up. But the difference today is that I work a 12-step program. You know, I work a 12-step program. I have a sponsor, and I do meetings, and most importantly, um, I give all the credit to God 100%. Like I have a relationship with God today. You know what I mean? And and I think that's a beautiful thing for me because I never seen myself living to be 41 years old the way I am today. I never seen a future for myself growing up. I never seen me doing the things that I would be doing today. So just to give you guys an example of the things I do today, I'm a work readiness trainer for Homeboy Industries, and I'm also a community organizer for Pride and Truth. Right? I do youth mentorship and advocacy, and I'm of service 100%. I pick up people, take them to meetings. I help people get into treatment, but most importantly, I'm a father today. You know, I might not have the best relationship with my kids. I still struggle with my kids. I still struggle with myself sometimes. But today, if my kids were to call me, like I'll show up for them. You know, before I didn't, I couldn't. Before I couldn't even face them because of all the guilt and the shame I was carrying. And today, I want to say that I've been doing such amazing work on myself that I'm able to love them today, right? I'm able to embrace my feelings and my emotions, and understand, more importantly, understand that because I might be going through something, or because I might be feeling this, that I don't have to go out there and use to deal with whatever I might be facing, you know.
Do you think that by helping the youth, it's healing a part of yourself, that you're being who you needed when you were their age?
100%. What it does for me, it's not only healing, it's making my amends, living amends. You know, because growing up, there's a lot of things that I didn't want to cover in this interview, because I'm not like I'm not gonna promote any violence or negativity or anything like that, right? I could promote positivity without that part, right? Um, that doesn't take a, I mean, that doesn't mean that I didn't live through that life before, right? And one thing I know for a fact that I needed when I was a kid was somebody to guide me a little bit better in life. I had a lot of people in my life, a lot of homies that guided me, but their guidance always got me. You know what I mean? Like the guidance that I received on the streets is the guidance that gang members have nowadays. You know what I mean? Like my thinking was distorted. You know, it was okay for me to be in prison. I mean, I fought a lot of time before. You know what I mean?
Do you think? Sorry to cut you off. Do you think that also being a counselor for the youth helps you use that with your kids as well? And are you guys trying to build a relationship?
I want to say with my kids is a little bit different because I have to approach those conversations a little bit different with my kids, right? Because I mean, you got to think about it like this. I have a lifetime of messing up, right? And yeah, even though my like in my thought process in 2008 or wherever it might have been, like I wanted to get better, like it didn't get better. I didn't get better. You know what I mean? It didn't start. My transformation didn't start happening up until like a couple of years ago, right? I have a daughter that's 21 years old and another one that's 19. They don't see the part that I'm doing, the things that I'm doing today, to take away everything else that I want to say that I've been through or that I put them through, right? So those conversations have a little bit like they have to be a little bit different with my kids because, I mean, they understand very well what I went through. I do talk to them about that, but also, they, it's probably too soon for me to start trying to preach to them. Does that make sense? Like it's probably too soon for me to like I have a daughter and this is another thing that hurts me too. I have a daughter that's out there in her addiction, right? She's caught up in the lifestyle, all that. Everything that I went through, she's going through as a kid. But my biggest thing is I'm trying to hold on to her. I'm trying to reach her. I don't want to lose her, right? But I know very well that every time I've had this conversation with her about recovery, I push her away. You know what I mean?
So how, at that moment when you were going through it, how did it feel? Did anybody try to come at you just how you're trying to come at her? Maybe trying to approach how it worked with you eventually.
I don't, when I was going through my things, and if I don't remember anybody, I don't remember having the support that we have today, right? When I was a kid. I don't remember programs being available. They are like the way they are now. And I want to say that I didn't have what I'm trying to provide for her now. I didn't have a safe place for me to deal with my addiction or with my emotions or nothing. You know what I mean? So when I talk to my daughter, I don't even talk to her about how she can get better, because I feel like so this is one thing she told me before. Like, how are you going to tell me how to get better if you're struggling to get better yourself? Makes perfect sense. You know what I mean? So my approach to her is more like whenever you need me, if you ever want to talk to me or whatever, just know that you have me here. I'm not going to push you away. I'm not going to judge you. I'll embrace you and I'll greet you with open arms. And sometimes I just have to wait for her to call me. Like, there's a lot of times that I was trying to call her on the way over here and she doesn't respond to me. You know what I mean? My other one, I want to say that I have a better relationship with her now. But in the past, like, it was real shaky. Like, I disappeared on them a lot. There was a lot of empty promises. There was a lot of things that I told them I was going to do and I didn't come through. I would end up in jail. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't blame them for the resentments that they have, because I know resentments are real. Coming from somebody that resented his family, his mom and dad for their whole life, I know how resentments work. You know what I mean? So my thing is, now that I'm in recovery, now that I'm living different, that I'm turning my life around, like, I don't want to be that oh, look at me, I'm doing better, like I deserve this. No, I know everything has to be earned, and that's where we're at right now. I'm trying to earn my place with them. You know what I mean? Did that answer your question? Like, I have a daughter, my 19-year-old daughter, and she has a 1-year-old baby boy, right? So I'm a grandpa now. I think that's probably the biggest and the most valuable thing that I could have today is a second chance of being, if not a parent, a grandparent. You know what I mean? And even with that, like, sometimes I still struggle, because I do, as much as I would want to see my grandson, I do have work, I do have school, and I mean, there's times that I want to go out there, and lately I've been feeling sick. I just had a surgery, I couldn't make it. You know what I mean? But it's these little moments that when I talk to my daughter or I hear my grandson's voice, that reminds me of why I need to do what I continue doing what I've been doing. You know what I'm saying? Like one of the things that I want to highlight too is that that there not only do we have like the resources to guide these youth into healing, right? But we also have the safe places for them to have recovery. You know what I mean? Because a lot of these kids, just like I was once a youth dealing with my pain or whatever, like the easiest way for me to deal with my emotions and my pain and everything was to get high, because that's what was readily available for me at the time. You know what I mean? Now these kids don't have to go to that. Like especially nowadays, I was just having a conversation with Crook about like, man, it's unfortunate, but we've been losing a lot of people due to that fentanyl. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's my biggest fear for my daughter, is getting that phone call, you know. And so right now I'm as much as I'm a man of God today, and I'm trying to live different and everything. I still struggle with my thought process sometimes, because I'm not completely healed. You know what I mean? And like I'm like sometimes I'm thinking like, man, I need to go back down there and get my daughter out of the trenches. But what is that gonna do? What is me going over there and kicking in doors and doing all that gonna resolve if she's gonna continue doing that? I can't help her unless she wants to help herself. You know what I mean? And I have to understand that and accept that more than anybody, or more importantly, because I tend to build relationship with I'm not even gonna call them clients, because they're not clients. Like with these people that are trying to get into recovery and everything, and we end up losing them, and then I end up feeling like I didn't do a good enough job, you know. Not like, I know we can't save anybody, but at the same time, I gotta just continue doing what I'm doing in high hopes that I do lead somebody into recovery, or that I am an inspiration to somebody, especially to my kids. That's all I mean. Besides the fact that I'm doing this to get clean for myself and to live a better life and everything, I before I leave this planet, I want my kids to know and understand that I did my very best at being a different person than I was before, and that they could always come to me no matter what. You know what I mean? I never had that growing up, and I want them to have, even if it's now, like at 19 and 21 years old, I want them to have a father. I want them to be able to. Go ahead.
Can you do me a favor and say it's never too late to break the cycle?
Yeah.
Because it's exactly what you're doing, even though it took you this long.
What you're absolutely right. It's never too late to break that cycle. It's never too late to get free from that bondage of self. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't know what that looks like. A lot of people don't know how to approach that, and that was me at one point. I think me transforming my life and getting clean and everything took that long because I was scared to go into it. I didn't know how to do it in the beginning. Does that make sense? The only thing that I knew was a lifestyle, you know? I didn't know what this change was gonna bring. I never lived responsibly, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I paid bills. I had a job and everything, but there was always something on the side. There was always a hustle. There was always, come ups. Like last Christmas and this Christmas was the two Christmases in my life where I felt honored to blow my whole paycheck on whatever I needed to buy my kids, you know what I mean, and my grandson and everything. Not having to buy something stolen from over here or go steal this, you know what I mean? It feels good. I'm not even playing. He's laughing right now, but it feels good. I'm gonna tell you guys, you know. And those are those are my little blessings, you know what I mean? Like those are my little rewards, you know. My other rewards is having people reach out to me like, hey bro, I'm because of the work that you're doing. Like she's making me gonna cry, darling. Hey, serio. Hey, I see her. She's all.
It's just when I start crying, I just bawl out, and then I have to look up. I'm sorry.
Wait, we're not partying over here. We're not about that life anymore.
Nah, seriously. But the thing is that like my rewards today, like it's just seeing the smile in people's faces. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a big part of a treatment center called Grandview Foundation. That's where my foundation is at. That's where my support system is at. That's where I feel God led me to be able to get my life back in order. And I'm gonna tell you guys one thing. I that place was where my transformation really began. I mean, my transformation, let me rephrase that. My transformation began at Homeboy Industries, but that place gave me it provided a safe space for me to be able to unload. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like, I was working with a therapist at Homeboy Industries, and for the first time in my life, while I was working with a therapist at Homeboy Industries, I felt a sense of relief. Like, I felt like I was finally taking off all this fucking heavy armor that I had been carrying my whole life, you know? And I started dealing with my PTSD through my therapist. I started learning coping skills, and that just that alone made me want to learn more about my addiction and my PTSD and why I operate the way I do, and it made me wanna heal a lot more. And the things that I started finding out as I was healing is that I started loving myself a lot more. You know what I mean? Like, I started smiling a lot more. I started being happy a lot more, and I'm like, man, like, like, I started feeling good. Like, I started feeling amazing. When I went to the treatment center, when I went to Grandview Foundation, I feel like I was placed at the right place at the right time with the right people, because they have some great facilitators, they have some great counselors, and they have some great therapists. And I think those three key components was the foundation of my recovery, you know? And if we could, even if we could implement that in other kids' lives, like just the counseling, the guidance, I mean, the facilitating, I want to become a facilitator for the youth, you know, run men's groups and stuff like that, to have the youth understand that there is people that have been through the same things that you have been through, that overcame those things and how they overcame them. I want to be that guidance for them, you know? My name is Jose Echeverria, and thank you once again for listening to my story.